Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
And welcome back to Realistic Sustainability. I am Mike, and I am here with the beautifully sun-kissed Jamison. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. People are probably wondering why I said sun-kissed. If you're following Facebook, you already know, but we spent some time in lovely Hawaii and got some sun this week. I think we were there, 9 days?
Yep. And now I'm freezing.
That's the bad part of coming back from a consistent 82 and sunny back to Michigan, which was a balmy 48 and rainy the moment we got back.
It was miserable to return.
Oh, we had some friends with us too, and at least one of them is almost whiny disappointed that we're back home.
He's messaged us all day today. Like, why are we here? This is awful. Can we go back to Hawaii?
Well, and for those of you who don't know, we did go out to the big island of Hawaii, which is one of our favorite places, hoping to retire there someday, but it's the nature island. So instead of going on excursions and things, Jamison did a fantastic job with her Google Earth skills, finding little coves and special places for us to explore, occasionally driving a rental Jeep through knot roads to get to different places, but we got to go to some really neat places. Most of those are posted on my Facebook. You're welcome to join that if you would like, but we're slowly moving some over to Greening, Instagram, and Threads. But it was a lot of fun. It was very relaxing. And it's always a bit of a bummer to come on back home after being in a paradise like that.
And I have to say, it wasn't a knot road. I actually let you experience Mars without actually going to Mars.
That's a lot. It was definitely, you could tell where they were wanting a road. And even in the small sections there was road, they immediately put in speed bumps so you wouldn't get used to like a flat surface.
Oh, yeah.
There's even a video of it on my Facebook.
If you watch the video, it doesn't do it justice they're not even potholes at that time. They could have lost full cars in them. You cannot tell from the video how these holes were. It was pretty ridiculous. It was a good thing we had a Jeep. That's all I got to say about that.
Oh, we ended up, you and Nicole bouncing around in the back. I think your head a couple of times.
Yeah,
I was going early, so I was going slow.
Yeah, I was just not prepared.
So anybody interested, you can go to my personal Facebook. That's where everything is preloaded to. And we'll slowly add some over to Greening. And I'm thinking about putting up a spot on the website for some of these excursions and some of these trips, because these nature-based trips are a lot of fun.
And like you said, we found a lot of places kind of off the beaten path. Because, like you had said, one of my many skills is excessive Google Earthing or Google Maps. Actually, it was Google Maps that you just see where you're at, and then you kind of look ahead down the road, and then you zoom way in and go, hey, that looks like a beach. Let's try to get there. Or that looks like a fun forest. Let's try to go in there, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's probably a lot easier when someone's just like, hey, this was a cool beach, go there, instead of the hours and hours that Nicole and I put in from the back seat driving.
No, I had a lot more fun doing that than going on different commercialized excursions. So that was a great vacation. We got to see some wonderful places, from tide pools with its own life per hole, really, to watching massive waves hit the beaches, to sea turtles. A wonderful experience yet again. And if you ever want to see what the Big Island's like, jump on there and take a look. Anyways, we should probably get to the show and not always brag about our vacation.
I could brag for hours, but go ahead.
Okay, fire. So this week we want to talk about cities and their design, and how there seems to be a severe disconnect between how a city is designed, how leadership wants to design that city, and what people need and what is better for the citizens within that design. So it is kind of that disconnect between the two. I'm not sure, Jamie, if you've ever, visited a place and was like, this is rather inconvenient, or, oh, that is excellent, different amenities throughout cities. But that's kind of what we want to talk about is things people expect, want, or need, and why the heck they're usually not in the city or town.
Yeah, I'm interested. You kind of gave me a brief rundown on what we were talking about today, but I will be honest, I did zero studying on any of it because I was doing back to work.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the things about coming back from vacation. You have to go back to work. But this has actually popped into my mind after a couple different conversations. Here in Duran, we're trying to do a bunch of different things to help grow the city. And one of them is to increase the infrastructure. Now, when you think about infrastructure, you think asphalt, concrete, parking lots, electricity. Electricity is part of it, but we're focused right now on getting free internet in the downtown space. The whole idea is if we build the amenities in the place we want people will spend their time there. And so we took this idea over to the city, and it's been about a year and a half.
Why don't you explain why you feel it's important to have Wi-Fi in the downtown area?
Oh, it's okay. That's probably a pretty good idea, but many cities already have it. And it has a lot of different reasons. Here in Durand, we have very little cell service. It's a smaller town. When we have vendors, first of all, that come and do some of these new events that we've been creating, and they're getting bigger and bigger, many of them can't function without a digital connection. They can't run their registers. They can't, some of them can't even display certain products in a way that they're used to. And that hinders some of them even coming to town. For example, one of the food trucks always runs out just before the concert even starts. And I was asking them, why don't you bring more food? Their answer was, I can only take cash. I have no idea how much I'm going to sell. So I bring what I know I can sell so I don't lose money on taking food home. Well, if they could take cards, they would bring more food. So that's one aspect. Another aspect of it is that there's a lot of young children who run around downtown, not necessarily with their parents, teenagers and such, who don't have an active cell phone. Well, many families use deactivated cell phones to be able to communicate back and forth. But in order to do that, you have to have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we did that with all of our kids. We've done that before we were ready for them to have actual cell service.
Yeah, and so every time I see kids, we hook them up at Dabble so they know they can run over here and make a call if they need to. But the city itself should be a safe place where they can make that phone call from anywhere within that city limit. At least the downtown space. I would prefer the whole city, but I'll take downtown space.
Got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. Plus, and individuals who work from home, people who don't have access to the internet at home and maybe have to work while the library is open. They can come anywhere downtown, sit in a rocking chair, walk into a building, whatever they want to do, and utilize that internet to maybe apply for benefits or jobs or just check their email and other things that they want to be able to do. But what that does is take them from somewhere else and puts them in our downtown space, which means maybe they'll stop and get a coffee. Maybe they will run over and get a sandwich. Maybe they'll notice a business they never noticed before, but it puts more feet downtown. On top of that, the more feet you have downtown, not in cars, the less crime you have. More people are looking, more people are there. They're observing the surroundings. It makes it harder for someone to do something negative within the city. So there's so many different pieces to that puzzle. Small businesses may get more business because more people are downtown. Makes them a bit stronger. It keeps them around a bit longer. A lot of small businesses cycle out in 1 or 2 years. We're trying to build an infrastructure that makes it appealing to be in our small business district. And that's why we were pushing this and trying to get it situated to where we were hoping it was done last year. But what we learned in this process was the interesting part. The fact that the city, before we go too far, I'm not holding any of this against the city. I think this is a mindset you would find in almost every town and city throughout the United States. We found out that after a year and a half talking about all the pitfalls and issues with internet, they were unable to secure it with a reasonable cost. I think they were saying it was somewhere around $27,000. It had to do with burrowing under the street to be able to connect. Let me clarify why they were saying that. It wasn't because of a lack of understanding of how digital works. It was because we have a provider here in town called Daystar, and they do fiber optic, which means they're using those glass lines and each component has to connect. So it makes sense, and I understand why they thought they would have to burrow under the street, run a new line, or find room in another conduit and run that line. Daystar is donating. I want to say that here first. They are donating the service. They are not charging the city monthly. They're saying, you put in the infrastructure, we will offer the internet service 100% free of charge.
That's amazing.
It really is. And so, first of all, kudos to them. They are citizen centric. They care about the communities. This will be a big deal for the community. And, hey, it gives them marketing and some other pieces, but that's a lot to just give.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to say that. So free internet right off the bat. What we had to do was come up with the funding for the equipment, figure out how we're going to collect data, where's that collected data go, because there's a lot of pieces to this. When someone signs in and says, I won't do illegal things with your internet, we get that data. So next time we have a concert, we can alert everybody. We've got another concert downtown that's free of charge. Come see us. That data becomes very, very useful. But when you hold those leadership jobs, you get kind of in a rut where you have less time. And just like any job, you have less time to do too much. The city itself has received 2 very large grants, one for a park renovation of $1 million and another for a crosswalk where it's currently blocked off, where the city can't go to our signature museum. And they have a grant, awarded grant for $1 million to update that crosswalk so that citizens will go back and forth very easily. That'll also be a pretty big deal. That you have $1 million to create 25 feet. I think it's going to be pretty cool and pretty safe. But you're paying for the big arms that come down for trains and all, that block the intersections and all that stuff. So our leadership has to administer those grants, which is not easy. These are federal grants. There's a ton of hoops to jump through. So I know their time is limited. You got to get it done in a period of time. And some of these things you never could have foreseen. You have to contact companies with the ability to tell you what's on that property historically to make sure there's no burial grounds and all these different aspects. I know they're busy. I know that what they are doing is keeping them very, very busy. Another problem that we've had here in town is that we don't have a ton of business that pays the taxes. Well, with the cost of everything rising, residents are carrying that weight. They're unhappy. There's a lot of pushback against it. They've gone from raising taxes to adding to the water bill, and they're running out of avenues. And so when they get funding from somewhere, they try to use it very carefully. So I want to keep that in mind also. But during our meeting with the city, they just said it's not a priority. I have no idea who will use it. It's not a priority. We would like to take this money that's earmarked and go buy a truck. Our DPW needs a truck to be able to do more work. And I understand that. But I think it was a fundamental misunderstanding of what we were trying to do. I understand buying equipment. Don't get me wrong. But if you're not spending some of your money into making money, that becomes harder and harder. Over time, it becomes more and more challenging to buy a truck. And you've heard me say this 5, 6, 7 to 20 times to people, but it's real. You got to build the base infrastructure and get people interested before we can start having businesses and more of a tax base on a business side.
Yeah, you got to show that, the revenue for the businesses can be there to get them interested in spending their money to put their companies here. So you're absolutely right. And if they see a very busy downtown, they're going to want to be there.
So what it did is it had me thinking about as we travel, as we go places, I look at the cities to see, are they citizen centric, or is it what it's always been? A crap load of parking. Every city since the car has been accepted, because remember, when the car first came out, people with horses went, "What are you going to do with that thing? You got to fill it up with stuff. Where are you going to fill it up?" All the same things we say about electric hydrogen fuel. We haven't learned anything in like 100+ years, but
I just keep
it's
repeating
really
ourselves.
the exact same argument. It's kind of funny when you look at it. But ever since cars were finally accepted, the infrastructure was there. It's almost like we never wanted people to walk the streets. We want them in their car, pull in, walk in someplace, come right back out, get in their car and drive away.
Mhm.
We have an insane amount of parking in this city. You've heard me, for lack of better terms, complain about using so much space for cars when there could be way more space for people, but it's just how it is all across the country. It's like no one can walk that block. No one can walk a little bit to get to a place. There must be a massive lot. For example, big box stores. How many big box stores actually use their full parking?
Well, it used to be on Black Friday, but even now, like not so much anymore. The Black Friday is not really
It's
a
all
thing.
wasted.
It was once a year. It was utilized to the max, and that was it. But now that we have, online shopping, that's not a thing anymore anyways. So,
It's acres of parking that no one uses. Some places are putting solar panels in their parking lot. Some are adding a Big B in their parking lot. Some are, putting Tesla charging stations in their parking lot. They're doing that because they don't use the parking lot. And
right.
here
And
we
they want to
are.
bring more people in.
Yeah, they want traffic. So you got to look at that back into your city. And I don't think is something that's common when designing a town or city or maintaining. Because I think when you jump in, 100 years after it's been kind of designed, you're really more maintaining and trying to just keep things, you're juggling the balls to keep things afloat.
Well, and playing catch
And
up on some things. There's some
Mhm.
eras, in life that there was more revenue, and there's some eras where there was less revenue. So, they may have to be playing catch up. Like you said, the vehicle, they needed a new vehicle. There may be a time where they couldn't have maintained it as well as they needed to. And that's why they now need a new one.
And I don't envy the position because even politics plays into what they cannot do. They have to go to a board, they have to go to the council. And some people have promised this, some people have promised that. And maybe when there is a decision to be made that's very important, it doesn't get done because the group that makes that decision has a different agenda. So there's also that. So we got to keep that in mind too. But I heard we just simply don't have time to work on a project like that. It costs too much. The quotes were too high and they had other priorities, which I think from an outside perspective is probably legitimate. But from an inside perspective, they gave us this project and said, here, Chamber of Commerce, if you can figure it out and bring it to the council.
And it is
And
cool that they did that.
yeah, hey, I'm not saying no. I'm just telling you, I can't. I just simply don't have the time. Now, would have been great a year and a half ago, but I'll take now. This is the second best time. And within one meeting, putting all the stakeholders in one room, Daystar, who's gracious enough to give us the internet, the company who's looking at all the equipment install, the electric company who's going to run the power, and the redesign that we created that doesn't require drilling under a street. It increases the footprint by 50%, and you don't have to drill under the street. We're talking between $5,000 and $8,000 total for lifetime, as long as there's Daystar, lifetime free internet for the citizens of Duran.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and I think a lot of that just had to do with, like you said, getting everyone in the same place so they could all be on the same page and hear the same information all at once. I believe in the beginning it was a lot of back and forth between multiple people. And then, that I feel like a lot of information gets lost. So I think it was a good idea that everyone came together to work on it.
Yeah. And I think no one can be an expert in everything. You start asking me about like medical stuff, and we are in deep, deep trouble. Okay. I love sustainability. I'm a reasonable engineer. Like there's things you can ask me and I'll jump in. If you start asking me about healthcare and medical, and I am useless. And I think what happens is we ask city leaders to be more than what they should be. No one can be an expert on everything. So you have a person who's an expert, the finance and the intricate workings of a city, and you tell them to understand wide scale internet databases, firewalls, all these security protocols. To them, it's a liability. That's
Oh,
all
for
they
sure.
see is a life. They're not catching this is how we build our businesses. This is how we bring people downtown. We take care of our vendors. We do all these things. They see someone's going to use it the wrong way and we're going to get sued. That's it. That's all they see. And you can program
Right.
that out.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
I'll be honest, you've explained it to me a million times and I still don't get it. So I just say, poof, make it happen.
If there wasn't a way, Walmart, Starbucks, McDonald's, none of them would have it. They're not going
Right.
to take the liability, right?
Right.
There's a way to manage these things. So this is the situation that had me wondering, why is there that disconnect? Why is it that when you have that $30,000 and you need a truck, but you've needed that truck for a year, we don't look at ways to improve the city so that next $30,000 comes quicker?
Right.
We don't look at the amenities that make our downtown space nice. You see that in cities that we would say have too much money. The ones that have grown to the point where their tax base is expensive and it's big, rich houses. And then you see, solar picnic tables for charging devices. You see, a dog park and all these other things. We don't think about adding that to the small towns or even to the existing cities. There's some cities that are massive that don't have very good systems for people to
Right.
move around, or just even a wide, clear walking space or a
Right.
place to ride a bike that isn't in the street or on the sidewalk. And that's why while we were trying to work that out, I started thinking about it and wondering, like, why does that happen? And I think it's because of that narrow scope. They're worried that they're not going to get the things they have to get done. Remember, we joked about we've seen cities tear up a street to put in a new street just to have a water main break underneath it and have to rip the street back up, fix the water main, and put the street back on. And we're like, hey, when you tear up the street, fix everything,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
just replace it all. Well, they're probably not funded for that. So what happens? They get funded to replace an existing road that was just replaced. We always spend more this way unless it didn't fail. If they replace the road, nothing fails, they move on, life is good. But it's really bad when it fails. It's bad optics, it's bad sustainability, it's bad cost, and it's just another thing on their list that they have to find a way to get done instead of just doing it all at once. I think we see that far too often. There was even a time here recently, I don't know if you remember, but we had the Michigan DOT visiting, and I was talking about non-motorized transit, being able to maybe take some of the street parking away and create bike lanes with barriers between the vehicles and the bikes, or widen out our walk lanes so that they're at least wide enough for two strollers to be side by side, giving us a lot more room for people to move around. And they just kept saying, oh, we barely have enough money to keep the streets decent. We have no money for all this extra stuff. And I said, you know how you keep the streets decent? You reduce the amount of cars that are on it.
Yeah,
We
that
can
is
give
true.
people more modes. Suddenly you'll have more money to do the other things. Get people out of the car at least
Mhm.
half the year or 3/4 of the year. It won't be all the time. You're not gonna see skateboarders in the snow, but you can greatly reduce the stress of the infrastructure by giving more infrastructure and more option. And it was one of those things that you thought I kicked his dog. Like he
Yeah.
was angry. That money is for roads and parking lots, and that's what we're gonna make. And I think there's an addiction to asphalt, honestly. I'm not sure why. It has to have happened when the car became popular. I know General Motors, Ford, Chrysler all helped invest in infrastructure. early in the developments. So things like the trolley didn't get developed because we wanted everybody to have their own personal car. We didn't have mass transit in a lot of areas because we wanted everybody to have their own personal car. It's good for those businesses that no one has an additional method other than buying a car. But I think we're past that. I think we're moving into a period of time where people need the ability to choose different mobility options.
A lot of cities are kind of going back to trolleys and, I mean, they're electric bicycles typically, but like bicycles and a lot of the bigger cities are going back to that. And I think it's because they do realize that, like you said, the more people are on the sidewalk than in the street, they're going to spend more money. The more they're on the sidewalk than in the street, the less damage it is to the street. You're seeing a lot of these cities, even smaller cities that are growing. Like I grew up in a city called Fenton, and they have like, it's called the Hopper. You can hop around the city. It's basically just a bus, kind of like the buses that pick you up at the airport. Like it's one of those buses that just kind of drives around the city, hops around the city, and you're seeing a lot more. Even smaller cities have those to get people from place to place for events. So they have a lot of events like ladies' night out events, or during Halloween, they have witches' nights out and, stuff like that. And those things are just packed because it moves the people around, and people can park in one part of town and still shop and do things in the other in their car. So I think we're seeing a lot more of, and I say go backwards because, backwards from cars or whatever, but it's not really going backwards. It's utilizing and moving forward things that we've already had in place in the past. Oh, that was a really good idea. That did work very well. We just thought cars were the holy grail of transportation there for a while.
And I think that what we're seeing is the success of automakers and their lobbyists. They have helped lobby to reduce funding for mass transit for so many years,
right?
That everybody has a car. The mentality is everybody has their own car. Now what's happening? Gas is starting to go up. We've gone past peak oil. It looks like gasoline is not going to be the long-term solution because of more than just access, but climate. And so there's some changes being made.
Well, and it's even like ingrained into us too, because there was a point where you had said to me, hey, why don't we just use one car? Because I'm so close to where I work. Let's just have one car for a while. And I panicked. I'm like, no, I will not be without my car.
Right.
Like it was ingrained into me. Like you have your car with you at all points and times. And if you don't have a car, how are you going to handle an emergency, or how, like all the things that popped into my head that just made me panic.
It's amazing how it really would be more of a minor inconvenience when your neighbors, the people around you, you have family in the same town. Much like I was telling your stepdad about them getting a second car, they've just used ours the whole time we were gone. We can all share in some way, but that is not what's been ingrained into us. We all must have our own. You turn 16, you get your own car, and next thing you know, the streets aren't functional. You can't get through them. There's traffic, high density areas. People choose to avoid large cities because of traffic. Traffic is the thing that everybody hates. It creates road rage and all these other aspects. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Just reduce the parking. Make people walk into town. That was one of the coolest things about Italy was there was no driving downtown. Big poles came up. You're done. You're downtown. You stay downtown with your vehicle. You're there until 5:00. But most people parked on the outskirts and brought a bicycle on their car and bicycled in. A lot of foot movement, and the businesses flourish. Street vendors show up, and all these different aspects that make your city unique start to exist. And it's like we can't quite get that pounded into our head. So I'm going to do this fun transition. You're going to love this because I don't transition. But how would you have the energy to be able to do this extra quote unquote walking? I know, because while we were in Hawaii, we did a ton of hiking. And everybody knows I'm a chunky guy. Because I'm going to transition this directly into Magic Mind because that is exactly what I did while we were in Hawaii. Is with all that extra walking, not accustomed to doing it, I stayed on that regimen. Drank that in the morning, got my normal mind clarity. Although I think you and Nicole would say that wasn't there because I'm driving in new areas and some indecisive movements were happening.
Your driving was quite interesting in some places.
Well, in my defense, new area, new vehicle. I'm not driving my car. I'm driving this plug-in hybrid Jeep, which I've never driven. That's like a Wrangler before. It handles very differently. It turns very differently. I'm trying to fit into smaller spaces. It was a challenge, but I could certainly see where you thought maybe I was
Oh,
a little out there.
it was the vehicle's fault.
Absolutely. Oh, well, for me and how I handle the vehicle. But anyways, you want to have the energy to be able to do that stuff. You may want to try out Magic Mind. That is one of the things that I've enjoyed that we've talked about weekend, and I'm not going to stop, especially considering they're now offering discounts for anybody who listens to Realistic Sustainability. It is worth a try. We walked miles in a volcano one day. I won't pretend like I wasn't tired, and I won't pretend like I wasn't soaked from head to toe.
Oh, it was hot.
I survived. I survived.
It was so hot.
I give a lot of credit to the vitamins I'm getting out of that Magic Mind because that was one heck of a hike. When you're going 45 minutes down, that's like an hour and a half up.
At least.
And I am not a small man, and that was quite the hike. But anyways, for any of you out there that want to support Realistic Sustainability while supporting yourself, you should try Magic Mind. You can go onto the website. I'll have the link down in the description for the show and get your 20% off and try it out. I like it primarily for the brain fog because I was getting to a point where it was bothering me. I'm more likely to take that drink, that one shot, than I am to collect a bunch of vitamins and take them. Because that's what Nicole said. She's like, just buy the vitamins and take them. So I did. I still drink the drink every morning and I forget the vitamins. So I'm not sure if you guys are better at that than I am, but I seem to suck at it pretty bad. If you get an opportunity, try it out. Go again down in the description, click the link, use the discount code sustainability20 and get 20% off. Anyways, I'll transition us back into the show.
Not yet. I'm not going to let you. And
no?
If you're extra interested, Mike was an influencer while we were in Hawaii, and every chance he got, he took a picture with whatever he was doing that morning with his Magic Mind bottle.
Not every day. But I got to tell everybody real quick, I'm not an influencer, and it drives our kids nuts to think that someone thinks I am. That is a lot of fun to take these young teens and preteens and go, hey man, I've got an Instagram. Let me get a picture with you. You'll get some messages. And it drives them nuts. Absolutely. So
you were in influencer mode for sure. We were cracking up at you. But he's got some very good pictures.
They are.
It's Magic Mind bottles in different locations in Hawaii.
Well, I was there. I drank those. Those were empty. I drank it. And then wherever I was, I took a picture. So anyways.
Did they ever make it out of the hotel? No, we're not done. I'm just kidding. Did they ever make it out of the hotel, or were we just taking pictures in the hotel? Did you take any out with you?
No. Well, yes. One day we did one in Hilo, but most of our locations were either extremely hikey or very, very windy. So it would have been nice to throw it up on the lava rock with the ocean behind, but I didn't have that in me. I was in discovery mode.
We didn't want to risk it going to the ocean.
Well, I guess the answer is I'm not a good influencer. Anyways, back onto the show. So when we look at these things, we want to look at what it takes to make those cities better. But I started looking up stats. I'm like, how bad is the average city? And it's kind of crazy. Ever since cars became the rule, more and more parking happened. So, for example, residential areas, housing, those kinds of areas, 35% of the land on average is designated for parking. We're talking driveways, side of the roads, whatever is designated for parking only. And an average across the United States, 35% of the land where you
Wow.
could be putting housing at
Right.
times or condensing is designated for parking. Urban cities, non-residential areas, it can be up to 50% of the land.
Wow. That's
Is
crazy.
look at stadiums.
Yeah.
You have a stadium, and if you zoom out, it's like 30 times the square footage just for parking.
Right. Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
so some cities are starting to densify their parking with ramps as much as possible, but you're still tons. All this square footage that could be used for something else is just for our car.
Yeah.
And people have been sold on the concept. Don't get me started on trying to get less parking in our town to use that as usable space. We have angled parking in our downtown area, and it's very dangerous. Trying to cross streets, pull out of that parking.
Oh, I hate pulling out a dabble because you can't see down the road because people are parked in the road and I can't see when people are coming.
Oh, yeah. And we could just as easily. Now, there's certain industries. The pizza place needs a parking spot or two up front for people picking up, maybe for the delivery person grabbing and going. Same thing with our pharmacy. We have a small town pharmacy who is amazing to everyone, and they got a van and deliver. And sometimes people are running in and out on a regular basis. That needs space. But Dabble doesn't need parking out front. I would argue almost nothing in our downtown space, really, other than the ones I've already discussed, need that angled parking in the front because we have large lots either attached to Dabble, which I let everybody park in, or the large city lots on either side. A lot of cities are like that. And instead of turning the downtown space into more of a park-like space, a more usable space, creating safety bike lanes and safety walk lanes, they just throw more parking at.
Well, and it's on the flip side of that, it's dangerous too for people walking on the sidewalk. Like, yes, it's annoying when I pull out a dabble, but when I am pulling into dabble, all those cars lined up in the front create a blind spot to where I can't see if people are coming down the sidewalk, if kids are flying their bikes down, speeding down the sidewalk on their bikes, like you can't see those because all those cars are in the way. So it's not only useless or, pointless, it's dangerous.
Well, and you made a very good point because the next thing I was going to talk about is some basic attributes that you need to make a non-motorized transit plan where walkability and bikeability have some use. And we talked about the two stroller with walkways. That should be a minimum. We're talking like 8-foot walkways as a minimum. But when you have walkways and you have bike lanes, first of all, having a shared walk and bike lane means you don't have either.
Right.
Because people aren't going to walk where someone's riding a bike, and someone who's riding a bike is going to go in the road to stay away from the people walking. So if you have a shared lane, you have no lane. No one's using it on a regular basis. But you have to have a barrier. You have to have the mental aspect of a barrier. We have trees in the streets for shade, but we also have those same trees in the streets to increase safety for anybody walking up and down the sidewalk. You have a curb to reduce the chances of a vehicle coming up and hitting someone. You have sharpened corners or bump outs so that when people make their turns, they have to slow way down to make those turns. Those are all safety factors for those who walk and ride bikes or rollerblade or roller skate or ride a skateboard. Any way of moving that isn't a car or a motorized piece of transit. I guess that doesn't necessarily count with bikes anymore with e-bikes, but you don't see that. You see that in what you feel to be the rich cities and rich towns, when it really doesn't have to be that. You can get rid of some parking and turn it
Right.
into usable space.
Right.
Every one of those buildings has a backdoor access or alley that can lead to the front door. You don't even actually have to have cars in the front at all. I'd get all Italy on them, start putting poles in. It'd look like a park right in the middle of that downtown space where only walking and riding would fit through. And that, because of the addiction for parking, and people have been fooled that parking is so important. They yelled at me the first time I brought up getting rid of parking.
Oh,
I swear we have more cars than people.
Yeah.
Or more parking than people. And they were just absolutely that I had crossed the line. even considering getting rid of parking. And I'm still talking about leaving some parallel in for some certain areas. And no, citizens have been sold on a bad bill of goods. It's like we want to be less healthy, so we want to go less distance, which makes us less healthy. It's just this negative feedback loop.
Wherever would we put all the cars for our one weekend out of the year carnival?
In those big parking lots, there is that disconnect. And I think what has to happen is in college, we have to spend more time talking about accessibility and mobility. Accessibility is usually a term reserved for people with disabilities. I think that's too small of a definition. When I think of accessibility, I think of zoning and making sure that when you zone, there's a grocery store, there's a place to get a haircut, there's all the amenities someone may need within walking distance, not three of them on the same block where you have to drive to the grocery store over here because there's no room over here for a grocery store because we have 15 haircut joints. You rezone and spread them out. Now, you may drive to the other one because of preference, but for those who don't have vehicles, everything is within reach. There's park benches to take a rest. There's places to charge your phone, which, by the way, is a safety factor. People need to have connectivity if something bad happens. If you're worried about crime, that's how it gets reported. So you need places to plug things in. By the way, it's not just phones. It can also be a mobility scooter. Give people the opportunity to move from one part of town to the next, create shade, make comfort. So moving back and forth isn't a chore. And next thing you know, your streets are quieter. Next thing you know, the town smells better. There's less exhaust running through the town. Your neighbors are talking to each other. They're becoming friends. They might even find out that the person they've been fighting with on Facebook for the last 5 years because red team hates blue team turns out to be a pretty good person, and realize maybe the TV's lying to them. Kevin over here is a nice guy. You want your community built through discussion, interaction, and you can't do that in a car. If you're communicating from car to car, it's usually negative. Hand signals and such.
Sign language.
So accessibility is making it so that all of the basic needs are clustered in different areas so that there isn't a part of your city where someone couldn't get to it in some manner that isn't a car. Mobility is the ability to move freely. Well, if you're trying to walk and there's no walking path, you have to be in the street, you are less likely to walk. You've lost the mobility to get from point A to point B.
Or bad sidewalks. I mean, some of these old big trees have created quite the conundrum with the sidewalks shifting up. That's a whole nother rabbit hole for you, but with the trees, but you couldn't drive like a sit down scooter, for someone with walking issues. You couldn't drive over some of these.
They move into the road, which disrupts their
dangerous.
traffic, and it creates a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And again, the reason why she says it's a whole thing for me is the way we design our sidewalks with trees is silly. We pack wood around the base for keeping the moisture up towards the trees so the roots want to come up to the water instead of just drilling down and creating a drain where those trees have to stride to go down to get their water. So we heave concrete all over. All these towns and cities across the United States, they waste all their money on the wood chips, which is actually making it worse, and it destroys their sidewalks. And we have that problem where it's pretty dangerous. Even people who walk tend to walk in the street, which makes your walkability useless when you've paid for sidewalks and no one's going to use them. So I've posted the solution to that problem on Greening Your Life. If anybody needs it, let me know. I can send it over. It's not really all that challenging. You can make it beautiful. You can make it easy to do. It's a low cost solution. I have not gotten it here yet. So again, old dogs, new tricks, right? So from small to large cities, correctively zoning, finding these little solutions to not tear up your infrastructure. Imagine how much money you save when you don't have to replace streets all the time, or you don't have to replace sidewalks all the time. You design the infrastructure for the long term. which allows you to have additional income to do some things for those citizens. Put in those benches, put in those charging spaces, put in a drinking fountain. They have ones now for people and dogs, drinking fountains for everybody. And in Durand, we even have food in the summertime. You can pick a freaking tomato and have a snack while you're moving. But you have to be able to build that infrastructure for people's use. It's almost like some places put a sidewalk there with no intention of anyone ever using it. It's for looks. It's small. It's, heaved up, cracked, damaged, almost useless, but it's there. It separates your property from the city's property. It's almost like a thick line when it's not supposed to be that. It's supposed to be a way for people to move. Anyways, if you had me on this topic, in a room, this could turn into 4 hours. So I'm not going to do that. I wanted to share some of the experiences I've had recently and how it's kind of enlightened me on how the thought process exists. I get what our city's doing. It's financially cash strapped from earlier decisions. And they can't necessarily justify what they consider to be a luxury that I consider to be infrastructure. They don't see it as a way to create growth. They see it as a liability with a cost. And I think we need more people in college who are going to be urban planners or city managers, or any of you who are going to choose to sit on a city council, understand the sustainability of urban design. Because the sooner you start making those changes, the better the flow of traffic will be. You and I have seen in this area, cities that started small, that ended up big, you avoid them now. You can't travel through Grand Blanc. You can't travel through, I think, Fenton at times. There's just too many people. And those aren't big cities. Those businesses are automatically going to start suffering. And it turns into this negative feedback loop, right? We get all these people there, all this tax base, all this money. And then no one goes to the shops because they're too hard. It's on the left side of the street. If I pull into that parking lot, I'll never get back out and be able to turn right. All these little mental blocks with getting into where these businesses are. I'll just get it from Amazon.
I think, too, even people who don't go back to college or, that are already in their adult life and not going back to college, there is a lot of studying that can be done. And you kind of have to, like what Mike's doing and has done for a lot of things, you kind of have to go and I'm going to say fight for it, but I don't mean fight for it,
Advocate.
Yes, stand up for it. And sometimes it takes 5, 6, 7,000 conversations. And sometimes people are like, hey, you know what? The last thing that Mike did worked out really well. We're going to trust, And so sometimes it takes longer to convince people, like with the Wi-Fi. And sometimes it goes really quick, like it did with, the edible landscape. But, one thing Mike hasn't done is when he sees something that is good and working for other cities, he will continue to stand up for it and push for those things and almost kind of be annoying about them until they...
Jeff certainly will get that shake his head look when man, you having a hard time making a phone call? If we just had the internet, you could connect to that. That'd be just fine. He's just shakes his head like, I know.
Yeah, because once Mike has an idea in his head, he will tell you all day, every day.
Point
but it's not a bad thing. It can be annoying, but annoying can be progress, and it has to be a positive annoying, not, a rude, nasty, argue, fighty one.
No, that doesn't get you anywhere.
It doesn't get you anywhere when you're nasty about it. Mike's always positive about it and just keeps reassuring and showing examples and proof and is willing to put in the time and the hours and, all of that. It's sometimes you're going to get a lot of pushback and sometimes you're not, but just being consistent, I think, is the key in trying to help your city grow.
Well, and also keep in mind, I do very little. I may have some of these debates. I may have some of these discussions. I may get to come in as a sustainability expert or know technology to have the conversation with groups. But we now have a core of people in this town who do way more work than me. I'm spread quite thin right now. So without a Candace or without Jeff or Blair or Lori or all these people in town who work so hard to get some of these things done. Sometimes I just have an idea, we get it going, and next thing you know, Candace has got it 80% done. It's never going to be just you. You may be the first one to advocate, but sometimes it just takes someone to stand up and say it. The next person says, yeah. And another person says, yeah, I think that's a good idea too. And next thing you know, you have this core group of people who are just working to make things better.
Well, and like with Audible Landscape, hasn't Blair's kind of been the one that's scheduled a lot of that, you know? So you set up the idea and people all took the ball with it and rolled with it. And, you know, they're making it, I mean, they're kicking butt. They're doing a really good job.
Yeah, and then now they're getting the schools involved. We have an ambassador program where kids can get their community service time to be able to get cords for when they graduate, to be able to put on their resume for college.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's amazing. We have all kinds of different groups in town now who are trying to get involved in that same way. And you've got Jeff, who's out there, you know, being an example. Most of the time, he's had some illnesses as of late, and which is, you know, a little heartbreaking for him, even because he wants to be out there doing the thing, doing it by example, staying positive. Don't get into a fight, yell, scream, stomp your feet. None of it will ever help. You continue to show the benefits. We talk a lot about our 3 mile, you know, quit watching the news. You can't do something about something across the planet. You can control what's in your 3 miles, or at least influence it. And now I got to tell you, there's a ton of people with a ton of influence getting things done around here. And it's fun to watch. We've got the attention of Shiawassee County. We're looking at grants and all these different things. We're probably on the edge of doing some really neat things. And it's really because of that group of people.
Yep. And they've been busting their butt for it.
Absolutely. There's a lot of heart and a lot of passion there. So anyways, I think that's, if you keep me on this subject again, and it's going to be 4 a.m, I will talk about city design until I'm blue in the face, as long as it's to this country. This is a fun conversation for me. So if this is something that you do for a living, or maybe you disagree, message me. Send me a message. I love having this conversation. Send me, you know, something on your favorite podcast platform. Send it to me by joining my personal Facebook or Greening Your Life, any of those. I would love to have the conversation, because I bet there's something you know that I don't that could really be integrated into this design I have it. So if this is your groove, get a hold of me. It's a fun discussion. And I know that's kind of a niche group, probably. She's laughing at me.
I am.
Anyways, that's all we had for you today. If you like this show, share it with a friend or post it on social media. We always greatly appreciate that. If you get the opportunity and you have the time, give this episode a 5-star review. I always like reading them anyways. On those days where I feel like the world's coming down and I feel bad, sometimes I just jump on and read them, because you guys say such nice things. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy. So if you get that opportunity, whatever your podcast platform is, just jump on and give it a 5-star review or a comment or something nice. Keep in mind, if you want to support realistic sustainability and maybe even your own mental health, go on to magicmind.com. Use the code sustainability20 and get 20% off and try them out. I still have not stopped. Even though our partnership lapsed, I never stopped taking them. So when they contacted me again, I was all in. And with everything that's going on in the world, I know people get stressed out. Don't get stressed out. Worry about your 3 miles. Every little step you take helps everybody around you live a better life. So we want to get better. Little bit, big bit. Thank you so much again for listening. I'm Mike.
I'm Jamison.
The sun-kissed Jamison.
Oh, this so very sun-kissed Jamison.
Thank you all again, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.